23rd day already of March. Expecting an earthquake in Japan at any given time now. We're 3 or 4 days in the hot zone where they should be having a huge earthquake by now. I'm your host tonight, Mr. Dana Durnford, the nuclear proctologist at work. You can call me the Gamma Goat. It's 709-589-4406. What has the nuclear industry been destroying so far today, I wonder? Each day we try to keep track of what the industry is trying to gut on this planet. It's like a Medusa. Everything it touches turns to stone. They're like aliens, aren't they? They hate everything on this planet. Except for nuclear, of course. Nuclear is a god to the nuclear industry. The nuclear industry considers all species scum, like the aliens would, right? I make a pretty good case for it. We got so much news. Oh my goodness. Hanford contractors. This is a Bechtel who's been robbing Hanford, the taxpayers of America, for 30-something years. 40? No. They've been there since the beginning, right? We'll get to it. So Hanford, we done the math on Hanford. Hanford got 56 tanks. Did you know that? Because that's what the media tells you everywhere you go. They got 56 tanks. They got to spend $700 billion to remediate it. They dumped 450 million of the same size barrels, 1 million gallon barrels, in the soil. 450 billion gallons total that they admit to, I should say, because you know there's more. That was just one incident. So they got an award now. Hanford is 580 plus square mile nuclear wasteland. And the Columbia River seems to be the target, one of their big targets for nuclear waste, which goes all the way to the Pacific and goes through millions of people's faucets on the way through. Bechtel. My God. You need a super fund to clean them up. Has received the highest ever annual rating for work at Hanford site's vitrification plant for 2022. Earned 83% of an incentive. 90, if they get $1 billion located, and let's face it, it's around $600 billion they spent on it. 90% of the money goes to administration. It goes to paying employees. And the money they're making is ridiculous. 10% actually goes to work. He said, I'm incredibly proud of the rating. The 450 billion gallons he dumped in the soil in the 50s. This is just one of many times that they've done this. Is equal, just as one incident, is equal to a 6-foot wide aquarium, 518 feet tall, 50 stories tall, wrapped around the entire planet Earth. They got 41 miles of online trenches there on top of that. The local landfills, it's illegal to dump garbage in an online trench. Not for nuclear, though. There's so many things screaming wrong with this story. We're talking about Taiwan, and remember. Taiwan nuclear industry is something special. That's about the best we can put it. They're special. Their idea to get rid of nuclear waste in the 70s was, first thing they done was moved all the natives out of the country onto an island. It's called Orchard Island. And the natives were living there in harmony with nature since they've been ostracized. And the nuclear industry is like, that'd be a great spot for nuclear waste, but the natives won't let us put it there. And you say, well, did you ask them? They're like, no. They're just going to say no. But me and the boys was kind of thinking that if we told them it was a canning factory, so that's what the Taiwanese nuclear industry done. They told the natives on Orchard Island it was a canning factory for tuna and salmon. But it was a nuclear dump. And that went on, their life went on for 12, 14 years until the story finally came out what happened. And they're like, no, too late, we already done it, you can't change your mind now. They built a nuclear dump and called it a tuna canning factory to get the permission from the natives. That's when Fukushima melted down, Taiwan had over 2,000 nuclear students were ordered to go online and spam the internet. 2,000 nuclear students spamming the internet is a very powerful machine. And they're telling everybody Fukushima was like a banana and a potato chip and walking in sunshine. These are lies, outrageous lies. So anyway, it all comes back again. It never stops with the nuclear industry, does it? They never let us down. Every day is like, my God, they found another way to be evil today. Look at that. That's crazy. Food from Fukushima overcoming reputational. And they do it every day. It's like every day. There should be like, take a day off being evil day for the nuclear industry. No. They're good at that. That's the only thing they accelerate at for some reason. They took the same energy and put it into small modular reactors. We have all kinds of them. They'd be in kids' toys by now. Kids' toys that never need a battery ever again. I can see it now in the future advertisement. Give them these nuclear batteries. Food from Fukushima overcoming reputational damage in Taiwan. Reputational damage. This is why I don't keep sharp objects around, right? I'd poke both of my eyes out by now. It's just radioactive food. Dana, stop your whining. Food from Fukushima. Okay, let's go back. Go back. Not very far, but let's go back. So, for a decade, 55 countries banned food from 14 prefectures, not just Fukushima City or prefecture. And prefectures like a state in America or a province in Canada. Or, it's a big chunk of part of the country that's chopped out and declared a entity, right, for corporation purposes. We're all people from Canada, but no, I'm from here, you're from there. It's like hockey teams, right? Getting fist fights because your hockey team didn't win. What the kind of planet are we when we see stuff like that? So 55 countries banned the food from 14 prefectures. Not Canada. Canada's not really a country, right? Canada's like a nuclear death cult or something. They got captured by the nuclear industry in the 70s. Canada sucks. Iwate Prefecture is a nuclear wasteland. Ibaraki Chiba, which is right by Tokyo, that's a nuclear wasteland. They wouldn't buy food from that in 55 countries. And overnight, on the same night, worldwide said, Fukushima's okay. I'm going to feed that to your kids. Not mine, yours. So eating food from Japan is not an option. Trust me. More than 12 years after the world's most lethal accident in history, an extinction level event, I might add. We got a poll to prove it. It's got to be true. It's in a poll. Is Fukushima massive radioactive nuclear fallout an extinction level event? We got 100%. Where's Charlie to tonight? He's usually in a spams us down at least one. I mean, buddy from Japan, the little shih tzu. We call him Charlie for sentimental reasons. More than 12 years after Fukushima Daiichi nuclear accident, food produced in the area surrounding the nuclear meltdowns are still grappling with the aftermath of the disaster, especially when it comes to reputational damage. Well, I don't see what the big problem is. Let's see if you can figure it out. What's wrong with these equations? So wouldn't you eat food grown in a nuclear wasteland surrounded by millions of one-ton bags of radiation in an evacuation zone because of radioactive fallout? You're racist. Japan says so. Must be true. Apparently, paper suits are all the Japanese will give the victims that they send into the nuclear wasteland. And TEPCO says they burned 7,000 paper suits a day. Well, by burning a radioactive suit, you're releasing radiation back into the environment, because radiation we're talking about is a physical thing. Don't worry about it. You're just going to eat it, get sick, and die. There's only 1,800 diseases. Nothing to worry about. Grown food alongside of one-ton bags in a nuclear wasteland, but you're bigoted if you say the food is probably radioactive, that they're grown along in the nuclear wasteland surrounded by millions. And these are pictures from the media. If that's not confusing enough, let me know. I can help. Unfortunately, the farmers' owners suddenly found it a struggle to sell to people within the nuclear wasteland country, and no longer possible to export because everybody banned the food from the nuclear wasteland and surrounding offending prefectures also. What's so hard about this equation, I wonder? Apparently, though, it's reputational damage if you say the food in the nuclear wasteland, in the center of the nuclear wasteland, might be suspect. The farm's owners, who obviously is incapable of being rational, suddenly found it a struggle to continue to poison people, and countries didn't want to be poisoned, so they wouldn't take it. And the farmer's like, I don't understand. It was just a nuclear meltdown. The ducks will eat all the radiation, Dana. Monthly inspections by the prefecture found no unsafe levels of radioactive substances. So shut up, fearmongers. But that did little to reassure consumers, retailers, or authorities, because they were seeing pictures like this in the medias. This is what they were doing. They were showing this picture and that picture in the media and saying you're fear-mongering if you think the food grown in the exclusion zone, an evacuated zone close to the nuclear meltdowns that are still melting down, is surrounded by thousands of one-ton bags in an area where there's 30 million one-ton bags surrounded by multiple prefectures where the food is banned worldwide by 55 countries, you're racist. Make that up on your own. I dare you. Double dare you, actually. That's why I got no hair left. I keep pulling it out, right? Unsafe levels of radioactive substances. See, I don't know where to start. What's so confusing? Like, they're talking about the Fukushima prefecture, which is surrounded by prefectures that were banned by 55 countries, and they're showing you pictures that shouldn't exist. That kind of picture to your right there shouldn't exist. Not me. Well, maybe some people. Some people will definitely say I shouldn't exist. We gotta have a long talk with humanity. Now, it's so friggin' bad. There's 865,000 extra cancers in the first year. Not everybody got health care. Did I mention they're harvesting, never stop growing food in a nuclear wasteland, surrounded by a nuclear wasteland, and shipping it worldwide? This is the type of creatures. These are not people, obviously. These are creatures that are doing this. A person wouldn't do something like that. See? A creature would. A nuke creature. What? It's a rare creature, and it goes by another name, nuke tart. Nuke tarts. Well, I think maniacs is the appropriate word, right? I'll show you some of their antiques. It's hard to talk to these creatures. So the Fukushima prefectural government, the government of Japan, the belligerent, wicked, morally corrupt, sinful, foul and vile and dishonorable and corrupt and depraved, degenerate, nefarious, sinister, demonic little demons. Done it again. Fukushima sake shop opens in New York. The Fukushima government has opened a sake shop in New York specializing in brews from the nuclear wasteland. Try rationalizing that one. So, they're growing just in the one prefecture £1 billion a year of rice. Now, they're growing other food, right? But the surrounding prefectures are doing the same. Just not as much. Fukushima was the breadbasket for Asia. And they've never stopped growing food there. There's no checks and balances. They're claiming they're checking for cesium. The original limit they had was the Americans and the EU raised their limits to 1,000 to 1,100 becquerels a kilogram right away. Japan raised theirs to 500 and said, look, we're not as bad as the Americans in the EU. We're just 500. Right, that was done within the first few weeks. They done that one. And then they haven't stopped since. That's the same excuse they use constantly. So go down and tell the 865,000 extra cancers just in 2012 alone how great Fukushima is. And see what the response is. But that did little to reassure consumers, retailers, or authorities abroad. Well, the food is... You're growing it in the no-go zone right alongside of 1 ton bags of radiation within a couple of miles of ongoing nuclear meltdowns, surrounded by 14 prefectures where the food is banned in 55 countries for over a decade. And now all of a sudden, overnight, everything is hunky-dory. Yeah, and in a couple of million years, I'll maybe accept that, but right now, not. They found an interested party in Thailand, but reasons they don't fully understand. The salmon didn't make it to the dinner tables. It got thrown in the dumpsters in Thailand because it was radioactive. South Korea shipped back 6 million pounds of radioactive fish in just one go. Serious radioactive fish. Taiwan, one of the larger consumers, with a handshake, not with a referendum like they did in 2018, but they had a referendum over 70% of the population. We don't want Fukushima food scumbag. But that's only binding for 2 years. And then the people that, like Environmental Progress and the rest of the American groups that went to Taiwan and propped up the anti-nuclear, the pro-nuclear community, which pretends they're the anti-nuclear activist, or pro-nuclear activists rather, which are the pro-nuclear community. Like, these are academics from the universities running the pro-nuclear so-called activists. And Environmental Progress, which is a nuclear lobbying, calls pro-nuclear environmentalists, right? That's why he named his company such a name. And he's an interesting character. He's a real propaganda machine. They're a lobbying group. He's very active. And he props up and-coming hotshots that are spin-offs from nuclear power plants, where he'll start funding them for activists, so not activists, but for pro-nuclear. So whenever a nuclear power plant might be shutting down, these people jump into action. They're hired guns. They'll slaughter everything on the planet for a paycheck. Worried there may be lingering effects, or maybe. We'll get to that maybe. Actually, we will. Some retailers in Taiwan have the same hesitations. Well, Boris Johnson drinking peach juice and using that as evidence that it's safe to eat the food from the nuclear wasteland that is surrounded by prefectures that were banned in 55 countries worldwide. Nothing confusing about it at all, actually. If you just consider that they're a death cult, then everything makes perfect sense after that. Wu was part of a group called Fukushima Zenshinden that was founded 3 years ago to help promote the disaster recovery efforts in Fukushima. These are lobbying groups, right? Public relation firms. Many of the members are from Taiwan or have roots in Japan. He says he felt more reassured about actually seeing the work firsthand. They have pride in what they make. You can have all the pride you want. That doesn't mean you're not going to poison somebody. It's a nuclear wasteland. I'll show you the evidence actually coming up in a little bit. So bring in the salmon. The salmon passed their so-called safety test. Every atom, a single atom in your body taxes it for the rest of your life. And if you're young, 30, 40 years down the road, that can manifest into a cancer. But there's 1,800 diseases that will show up before the cancer from the bioaccumulation. Because everything that enters your body has to attack the damage in the surrounding area every second for the rest of your life. Every second. 60 times a minute, 1,440 times a day. That thing is pulsing. So 60 times 1,440. That's how many. Now, it might pulse more than that, right? And it might be a high energetic one, like a curium isotope or something like that. And so the pulses are wrecking chromosomes and DNA in every direction. And it's also wrecking your organs. Permanent lesions, actually, on your organs. Permanent lesions on your organs. Thanks, nuclear. Every species gets that, is qualified. Nobody has an immune system that can fight it off. Is Fukushima massive radioactive nuclear fallout an extinction level event? An extinction level event? Bear with me. I meant to do better. I just don't want to lose my spot here. 414. Bear with me. Now, there's a lot more than what I'm going to show you. But I'm going to show you why I'm asking that, because that's meant to be a warning for everybody. That poll is of what's happening here. And we can qualify it and quantify it. And I've done the research expeditions for 6 years from Vancouver, British Columbia to Alaska. Hang on. From Vancouver, British Columbia to Alaska, back and forth, there's 27,000 islands, 4 to 5 months a year. 4 to 5 months a year.
Well, we got the big one up. I'm going to get off course here.
4 to 5 months a year.
We got the big one up.
And trust me, I've been everywhere. I've seen it all. Year after year, we went back looking for the species to your left. They're exterminated. Fukushima's pulse exterminated these species. They're permanently gone. They didn't recover. And what makes this remarkable is how the ocean works. The ocean itself is a soup of life. And so a glass of salt water would have 1 billion of these eggs and larvae in it, the very soup of life itself. And when the species don't come back after so many years, it meant you have destroyed the soup of life, because otherwise it would have reseeded the coastline. Now, these before and after pictures are incontestable. These are unassailable. These are fact. These are 100% unassailable facts. They are permanently exterminated. You'll never take those pictures again. Those species now, this diversity of millions of years of evolution, of genetic superior selection, is exterminated. And now they're claiming nuclear as the savior. Now the problem, the reason this happened, the tidal zones in particular are exposed twice a day to the low tide. And what I mean by that is the radioactive fallout covers the whole planet in this model there, 19.5 days. This model is 26 days. This is the Neptunium-239, which after 2 days decays by 50% to plutonium-239. Plutonium-239 is named after the devil because it's so lethal. And so we killed the soup of life. This is not an opinion. And that's why I put that poll there to remind those people out there that this is real. This is not a game. This is, as I'll explain to you, is Fukushima massive radioactive fallout an extinction level event? And see, I can quantify my assertions with the documentation because I've done the research expeditions. And I provide everything up at my website. The radioactive fallout is not a game. The grown food is definitely not an accident in the nuclear wasteland. The extra 865,000 cancers. Not everybody got health care. And cancer is just one of 1,800 diseases and illnesses, not immune deficiencies and injuries, that'll manifest from inhalation, consumption of radionuclides that are man-made. They're man-made because the solar system doesn't produce it. And another question is, why are all farmlands perfect spots for nuclear power plants? Why are nuclear power plants in all our farmlands? You think that's a coincidence? That the radioactive fallout, by the way, is not a coincidence either. They produced these models like there was nothing to it. It was really spectacular. I have an absurd amount of them from different institutions and governments worldwide. Let's get back. Fukushima is an extinction event. You can pretend it's not, but that's all you're doing. You're pretending. So back into the nuclear wasteland, here's the media coming out chastising people because of the alleged reputational damage of food grown in a nuclear wasteland, surrounded by nuclear wasteland, and for sale. Whole world's crazy. Japan to lift evacuation orders in the same nuclear wastelands in parts of Nami, which is a nuclear wasteland. See, nothing makes sense. Japan to lift evacuation orders in 2 Fukushima towns, both of them within a couple of miles of ongoing multiple nuclear meltdowns, where everybody ran away and couldn't go back. They're like, we don't care. Nuclear's getting a black eye. We can't have that. Let's move the children back. And let me see. We'll get to it here. As of January, 897 residents and 329 households were registered in the areas of Nami. It's just a couple of kilometers away from ongoing nuclear meltdowns. That is surrounded by nuclear. They picked up millions of one-ton bags there, which doesn't do nothing. It just repopulates with radiation immediately. It's only 3% of the land, which is a stretch really. 30 million one-ton bags, what they acknowledged. And now they're trying to bring that number down to, what is it, like 14 million, claiming 14 million or something. We got a record of it all, see? And they don't care. The media is just going to regurgitate whatever lie they say. And so they tricked them. This is Nami, by the way. Now they moved those bags to a couple of kilometers away to Futaba, where they cut them open and are growing food in them for sale. Because everything's possible since Fukushima, where they normally wouldn't conceive doing something like this. Now that's the way to go. We can't store it forever. Let's grow food in it. They can only grow food in it, though, for 45 years. Then they got to move outside the prefecture. They can grow food again once they get it out there. That's the law. Evacuation orders will be lifted in parts. You can't cross the street, or you ain't going to have any neighbors anyway, so don't worry about it. But you can't cross the street. You're not allowed to stop on the way to your house. You're not allowed to park on the street. You got to park in your garden. The whole world's insane. Everybody sits in silence, and the media comes out and gets upset and says reputational damage. It doesn't, like, you can't go into a nuclear wasteland and pick up some topsoil somewhere and tell people that it's going to be safe there. It doesn't work that way. When the rest of the country is radioactive, the whole country is radioactive, but the nuclear wasteland itself, why put people back in there for? They need to study people, right? They need human lab animals. Bio-robots, which are human robots, which are humans. They're not called humans, they're called bio-robots. By scientists. They usually spit whenever they say it, mind you. But Tomoka, which is... They never stopped growing food here, but it's been evacuated for 12 years. Some hard cases, eh? Yeah, this is normal. This is nuclear. If it's not batshit crazy, nuclear don't want nothing to do with it. Well, aiming for... I think they only hire people that only use one side of their brain or something. Well, aiming for a similar order to be lifted in the remaining village, this spring. Like, this is Nami. That's Nami's supermarket. An artist went in there and took pictures of people that used to live there and convinced them not to wear a full-blown suit. Well, like, you're talking about gamma shines and X-rays and neutron bombardments. Paper suit ain't going to protect jack shit in a nuclear environment because it's pulsing energy at the speed of light. You really think a paper suit is going to stop it? Of course not. I know you don't. The incoming moves affects districts in the towns designated reconstruction revitalization bases, but it's all about show and tell, right? The average person doesn't understand those little nuances, those little facets that are so important to the equation. Like, when you talk about nuclear waste, nobody bothers saying that it's splitting the atom into the environment, so you don't want to breathe air within 100 miles of these sites. Well, the whole region remains a difficult to return zone. The whole region is a difficult to return zone. You got to go into a difficult, which is a highly radioactive nuclear wasteland zone. Yeah. Welcome to the madness. Hey, we got a poll. Let's put that up for a bit of fun. Is Fukushima, because polls actually works perfect when it comes to nuclear. Is Fukushima massive radioactive nuclear fallout an extinction level event? So is all this endless perpetual disease factory known as radioactive fallout an extinction level event? Well, let's explore that thought for a few seconds. All the madness seems to... It's hard to wrap your mind around. Let me see if I can help you. Bear with me. We'll get there together. Okay. Hang on. That's the last thing Boris Johnson done was lift the restrictions. The first thing he done when Boris Johnson got into power was lift restrictions on baby food and cereal from the nuclear wasteland. And then just before he got ejected out of Parliament last year, he removed restrictions for everybody from the entire country, not just the prefecture. The Fukushima prefecture should be the very last one that you're going to remove restrictions from, right? Start on the outside of the perimeter and over a couple of thousand years work your way into Fukushima. Why isn't Boris Johnson down there stood up drinking the peach juice, So the radioactive fallout, this is why we got that poll tonight, right? I get lost sometimes. So that poll is because the radioactive fallout covered the entire planet. This is France's model, and it shows the radioactive fallout covering the planet in just 16 days. 16 days, and it covers the whole planet. This model from the Americans, NOAA, was a 40-day model. This model of xenon 133, which burns a hole through your lung. Nice. Is based on, right there, 14 days. This model in the bottom right-hand corner is 19.5 days. This is 27 days of the Neptunium dispersal. The xenon covering the northern hemisphere is based on April the 4th, right there, right? Which is 25 days. This model in the top right-hand corner is 20 days, for instance. This was a German model based on 6 years, But the problem is it covers the planet in just a couple of weeks. So the oceans are going to be covered by proxy. But it's hemorrhaging into the ocean. They're calling it a leak. And their versions of a leak got nothing to do with the actual word leak. They're the lunatics. And so removing restrictions on the food is a cruel thing to do to a population, right? Because the nuclear industry is... Japan is suffering from severe brain damage from the radiation, and now they become irresponsible and a threat to all of us and all species. We have to, as a population, kind of nudge them in the right direction, or else. What did we learn from the Fukushima heroes? Well, I don't know. That one, he would have died that day because he's spraying regions on fuel pellets. So he wouldn't have lasted the whole day, that feller. 16,000 workers ran away. They're not actually talking, so I don't know why we're talking about the Fukushima heroes. That was the homeless. They were exterminated right away. Just like all the species are now being exterminated. So you really think they went in there and tried to repair power? Really? Really? There was a tsunami? You think they actually went in there and fixed something? Do you? Really? Do you? Huh? Do you? Do you? Really? Do you? Huh? Do you? You know, I remember the Daily Caller says that they're going to reactivate the reactors. They're going to restart those reactors, according to the Daily Caller. In 2016, they won't lie to you at all. Well, in 2016, this was the official pictures. That was the official picture in 2016. When it actually looked like that. Because, you know, that went through. And this is what it looked like it after. Yeah, they put a few extension cords out there. Powered her back up. Giggity. It was 480 miles of the coastline looked like that. I'm sorry, like this. They couldn't get back into their control room, which is separate from the reactor buildings, for 7 years. But they got back in here in 3 inside the melter reactors, Dana. See? So they put this contraption there. It doesn't physically touch it. These panels are laid there by gravity with cranes. These are Kevlar sarcophagus in one way. And then they pretended that they're inside the building. The building was thrown everywhere. This is a 190-foot building, a 19-story building. There's literally not a single piece of the building that's functional left there. And it's that is the official picture at the top of a building that doesn't exist. This is why they put that there. And then pretend to look like that on the inside. Reactor 4. What did we learn? In Japanese culture, those who perform great individual actions which lead to highlighting the virtues of the individual don't provoke admiration. In the Japanese culture, it's the sense of the collective that counts, as proven by the heroes of Fukushima. The 16,000 who ran away. Like, you can't work in this environment in these brand new paper suits. This is a nuclear wasteland. So when they show you stuff like this, there's nothing you can do. This is what it looked like. You can't go in and throw a few switches, put down a water pump. I'll get it back here, hang on. Lost my mat here. So what was the Fukushima 50? Like, you can go there with a 4-foot thick lead suit on and it's still going to kill you. The Fukushima 50 Hard cases. Fukushima 50, there were 16,000 workers who ran away. They were homeless, the destitute, the victims of society, the immigrants that don't speak the language. So then you talk about serious diseases, and the only thing they talk about was cancer. There's 1,800 diseases. Mainly cancer, right? It's absurd. And like you're telling me, you got to go past millions of one-ton bags to get to work each day at this environment. This is the environment they had to pass. There was no bags back then, but they had to pass through that same environment that was incredibly radioactive. So nuclear scientists were not going there. Nuclear academics, retired this or retired that, wasn't going in there. They knew perfectly well what they were risking. Show me a hero and I'll write you a tragedy. F. Scott Fitzgerald. You couldn't go back into the control room, which is separate from the building site itself, or the building itself, for 7 years. And the Fukushima 50 was back in there and got everything up and running just right. Yankee Doodle dandies. A release of radioactive contamination area was fully evacuated, which is simply an absolute despicable misrepresentation of what's happening. This was a nuclear wasteland. I'm not going to waste my time on their lies. Worst case scenario was abandoned Tokyo, so how bad was it at the Fukushima plant? There's no nuclear scientists, no nuclear corporations, no academics. They're radioactive, invisible radioactive suits in their wearing special suits. These are paper suits they're talking about. They don't protect you from radiation. There is no suits that protect you from radiation. But like in Hanford, at least they use Scotty self-contained breathing backpacks to bring their own oxygen. I've never seen a picture of people at Fukushima with the appropriate equipment, ever. Worst case scenario was abandoned Tokyo, which is what they were supposed to do, right? And Japan and the Northern America coastline should have been evacuated immediately, permanently on top of that. Japanese imports have snaggled their way into South Korea. Like, you got to think about how the brainwashing actually works. Temporary radioactive soil storage site, there's 150,000 of them, hinder Fukushima farmers. But that's a really interesting way to frame a narrative, because they're growing food right alongside of one-ton bags of radiation that are not waterproof. And so every time it rains, it washes it through it, and it was picked up in the same field, so you can't pick all the radiation up. And then you just leave it there. And now temporary radioactive storage site hinders the farm. So the farmers should be arrested, right, for growing food in a nuclear wasteland. Another rice paddy serves as a storage site for piles of black plastic bags containing radioactive soil. These are 2,000-pound bags. So why would you import food from a country that should be all one-ton bags? Because there's so much radiation covering the country. These are questions. Which helps drive the recovery of the import value despite the actual volume remaining at 40% to 2,000. So the jacking up of the price is what happened. Oh! So they're shipping less than 40% of what was shipped in 2011. They say 2010, but you know what they mean. They mean 2011, right? They just don't want to say those words. Japan's seafood imports hit post-Fukushima high, but that's because they jacked the price up. And they're doing live exports. But it's only 40% of what it was. Dirty, disgusting, right? How manipulative the story is, and you got to read through the story and then catch the little nuances. Go, wait a second, they're actually it's a false belief in the food, right? Meant to prop up. It's posturing. It's desperation. It's like, because we're talking. Whenever you talk about a dishonest, a vicious, a devilish, a dreadful, frightening, dishonorable, unscrupulous industry like nuclear, got to keep it real. Got to try to keep it some real. NRC begins partial review of new scale. I thought that was passed. What's going on then? Is this a different design or something? Well, their other design is partial too, right? They don't have the whole design. There's some of it there. That's our friends, so they gave us a rubber stamp. Staff, like there's around 30 of them. You're talking about 1 million pieces of paper. We'll begin reviewing most of the new scale powers application for standard design approval. But they don't have anything to base it on. Right, so it's an experimental small modular reactor. It's not a small modular reactor yet. It's still got to be labeled as an experimental. They still got to build one, get the kinks out of it, re-engineer it, submit all those papers, get it re-inspected, get it back out there in circulation, raise the money, and then build it. 30 years, 40 years down the road or something. But they're being put on a pedestal because they don't want to make any transitions. They're up to no good, obviously. They're up to something. If they delay the building of alternative energy, then they can shit on wind and solar, right? Because wind and solar shouldn't be built without storage, obviously. Or the industry's going to take it and bludgeon you with it over and over and over. They're not going to try to come up with solutions. They just want to attack you. Because you're a threat to the scumbag, degenerate nuclear industry. The unscrupulous, unprincipled, underhand, shameful, scandalous swindlers. That's what these people are. So NuScale got a review of the design will begin once the company provides additional details. So they don't have it all in. The biggest scam out there, NuScale, never fails to disappoint, do they? It's Nuclear Engineering International, Dana. What do you expect? That's true too. As soon as you see the words Nuclear Engineering International, it's just like, oh God, what kind of gibberish are they going to run this time, I wonder? They're a hard bunch. Scientists find a common thread linking subatomic color glass condensate and massive black holes. Don't laugh. It's an important story, believe it or not. You don't want this industry figuring out certain things. That's how I see these kinds of stories. So, like, if you took antimatter and matter and combine it, what happens, right? Annihilation. Split the moon in two, Dana. So that's what they'll tell you, right? So this is the industry. They're the very last ones you want to give that secret to. That's like a scepter, a wine scepter, or a scepter, magical scepter from some Walt Disney fantasy. You don't want to give it to the nuclear industry because they're just going to go out and slaughter everything with replicating cells. The CGC measures a mere billionth of a kilometer. And black holes, in contrast, span billions of kilometers across. And, of course, black holes are an opinion. They know something is happening. And so their equation says, right at the current time, says black hole. And they're probably right, but they can't say for sure because they can't quantify the assertion, right? And Brookhaven, but you got Brookhaven National. The minute you see something like Max Planck or Brookhaven National Laboratories in the equations, then you got to get worried. Now it's time to be worried. What the frig are they up to? They're the last people you want to give this kind of knowledge to. There's really something else, right? What this group like. Brookhaven, of course, is built on one of the biggest aquifers in New Jersey. It's one of the worst neighbors you could ever have, too. Its legacy is just blatant. Get sick and drop dead. It's one great big disease factory is the best way to explain Brookhaven, right? They're talking about they can utilize this knowledge for quantum computers. They use cold atoms to simulate and address questions about the complex system. You don't want, right, because you know, these little savants coming out of these little communities or whatever, and these industries will snatch these people up, and because they're able to, you know, these certain, fairly functional, dysfunctional victims of society are weaponized to figure out stuff that this industry has, because this industry has no responsibility whatsoever. It's truly like some weird little demons. The research was supported by the Department of Energy, which of course that their legacy is horrific. Administration after administration after administration with just nothing but contempt. Nuclear Physics Program, the Humboldt Foundation, which has been around a long time, and the German Research Foundation. The Humboldt Foundation, Alexander, has been around 1769. And so they took the industry will take these types of endowments, right, and put it in trust funds and grow money with it for like 100 years. And that was a lot of money there. And then they'll turn it into a weapon. Or they'll give it to a weapon like the nuclear industry to weaponize all the... And they'll just keep... They got all kinds of these little foundations out there that people in good faith leave these foundations. They get snatched up by this industry. Becomes the executives and stuff like that on the boards. And then funnels the money into all these evil entities. It's impossible to remove the hundreds of radioactive material and 1,200 radionuclides. Only 62 reduced. But the minute you try to filter anthropogenic man-made radiation in this kind of environment, the sludge, the radioactive sediment, is lethal doses immediately within 20-40 minutes. You can't get in the building again because your filters are pulsing these gamma shines, these X-rays, these neutron bursts, these beta rays and everything else. Russian TV host threatens nuking any country that detains Putin. That don't make any sense. You're going to kill Putin if he does that. I call him Putin. Vladimir Putin. He's ex-KGB. His parents, Vladimir Putin's parents, his dad was a military officer in the Second World War, and his mom was a nurse. With the saw knocking off people's legs and everything, right? You can imagine what he ended up like. And then he worked for the KGB, and you could be sure whatever department he was working in was pretty scary stuff. And now he's the dictator of Russia. Calling them corrupt and fraudulent, malfeasant, scoundrels, whatever. Their contempt for you is real. Trust me. And this is a TV host. That's their job. They want to be on TV. Their job is to promote misery machines. And they get a lot of money, right? That's their job. It's just a job, nothing personal. Fukushima nuke report was so shocking they decided to treat it like it didn't exist. Top government official. That sounds about right, actually. That's the scary part, isn't it? Yeah, no, we couldn't deal with it, so. We just pretend it didn't happen. La-da-da. How's your day, George? It was going okay. We were thinking about going on vacation. Maybe a leave of absence for a couple of years. That's what the government was complaining because all kinds of people were taking leaves of absence. Yeah, you knew that was going to happen eventually. Is the Fukushima massive radioactive nuclear fallout an extinction level event? Is it an extinction? And yes, the research clearly demonstrates this is an extinction event. This is massacring the whales, the seals, the sea lions, the birds, the mammals, the animals, the insects, the biota, the fungus, the bacteria, the flora, the fauna. It's massacred in just 12 years. In just 12 years. And so we're well on our way into an extinction event. And it happens in increments each year. And there never was many spiders. And there never was that many insect-eating birds. And there was no fish were never that big. They were always skinny. And the whales, they always washed up in our coastlines as long as back as I can remember. Little skinny whales washing up, all malnourished and emaciated looking. That headline there, that's 2012. Top government official. Here's another famous headline from back in that area. These are some of my favorite ones. 60 and older should be prepared to die at your power plant. So if your coal plant breaks down, do you think you'll be seeing notebooks with those kinds of... 60 and older should be prepared to die. The coal plant's broke down. My God, boy, don't tell me the coal plant's broke down. I just hit 60. Oh, well, I gotta sacrifice it. Hopefully they'll call us the Fukushima 50 someday. 60 and older should be prepared to die. Woo! Nuclear is so carbon free. Makes me sick. What else they got for us? Vice Governor of Tokyo suggested a Fukushima draft. All of Japan must face it. 60 and older should be prepared to die. All of Japan must be prepared to face it. It was so shocking we decided to treat it like it didn't even exist. Let's just kill everybody 60 and older and be done with it. Let's get it over with. Nobody's going to like doing it. Let's get it over with. There's lots of them down there saying that, I bet you. They worked all their life. They're no good to us anymore. All of Japan must face it, so women too. Over 36% of the Fukushima children having thyroid lumps. 30% in Fukushima with tumors 2 centimeters or less. 2 centimeters. The thyroid gland is only 5 centimeters by 3 centimeters. So a 2 centimeter tumor on a 5 centimeter by 3 centimeter thyroid gland. Woo! These are mad. This is mad stuff. Not only that, this thyroid cancer is saturated with radiation, gamma, so it's going to be producing radioactive hormones. Just what you need in your stem cells, right? There are homes in Chernobyl now with children so grossly deformed we've never seen anything like in the history of pediatrics. Cancer at 6 instead of 60. So that's an interesting statement, because now it's normal for kids to have cancer, right? In every house, on every street. It's normal. Columbia medical professor inhaling just one radioactive hot particle can cause a cancer or heart problems or liver or lung or respiratory, pituitary or thyroid or adrenaline or Alzheimer's or dementia or autism Down syndrome, diabetes. I mentioned diabetes. So what's going to happen when you inhale 1 million? Contamination in Fukushima Daiichi now spreading all over the world. Were TV experts paid to say Fukushima had a leak? Apparently so, because that's what we hear a lot, isn't it? Think about 3 Mile Island. Had they downplayed the living daylights out of that in so many ways. We do a show each anniversary that really just destroys all the documentaries out there, rather. Allegations of pet deaths after radiation exposure is supported by top universities. So the pets that were left behind were dying of just randomly dying. Because these were huge doses. The governor at the time was only governor for like 3 days or 4 days. He didn't want to panic, right? And you know why they got 100 sirens around a typical nuclear power plant today? Because of 3 Mile Island. And Dick Thornburg didn't want the people to panic, so he told them everything was okay. 3 days later, he said, pregnant women and children might want to go take a vacation, but everybody else is okay. Because there's a lot of transient people in that area working. So he knew that it'd be a long time before you would get the malformations and everything. Reports of enormous increase in cancer deaths. I showed you the plume last night, actually, didn't I? Infant mortality rates doubled. They always decrease, too, when a nuclear power plant shuts down. Birds disappeared. So, there was a lot of radiation. People were right to run. The worst thing you can do is just shelter in a place or listen to the nuclear industry. It's the very worst scenario. Well, you don't want to live within 100 miles of these disease factories. 23% higher incidence is childhood leukemia within 16 kilometers of a nuclear facility. We have another study this summer of there's 6 times more breast cancer within 15 miles of a nuclear power plant. Death row in New York town where the nuclear reactor leaked. Almost every house on the street that somebody was sick with cancer or something else. Well, there's 1,800 diseases too, see? Sources said about 1,000 kinds of radioactive material released from Fukushima, not just cesium. Oh, the nuclear industry will come looking for you. You can't talk about stuff like that. Anti-nuclear bastard. Mom, Dana's being anti-nuclear again. Come down. Shocking radiation propaganda, local TV. News near Trouble, California nuclear plant. They were comparing it to bananas and sleeping next to somebody. And flying on an airplane. And 15 minutes in a canoe. Eating peanut butter. These are all propaganda narratives they use. U.S. government secretly injected people with plutonium. Not because they knew it was harmless. Like Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the Americans brought back around 4,000 dead bodies. And to Los Alamos National Laboratory, Argonne National Laboratory, and a few other of these national laboratories, and incinerated them at 3,000 degree Fahrenheit temperature so you can sniff the ashes for radiation. Because that's normal, obviously. Beagles to be injected with radioactive substances. So they also like the beagles, like to let them breathe it in because they got the big nostrils. So beagle dogs and beagle puppies are... they've killed billions in the nuclear industry in the laboratories. They hate puppies and they hate beagle dogs, apparently, from what we've seen. Dr. Raymond Gilmedy, Loveless Respiratory Research Institute, was a vicious offender. They're going around kidnapping people's pets, you can be sure. They have contractors out there to get their hands on that many dogs as they kill. I know Gilmedy had 96 studies on beagle dogs and beagle puppies. All the dogs, all the beagles dogs and puppies died in the raid. What he was sacrificed, what they call, was it sacrificed? What, I know. There's a word for it that they use. Hang on, I'll get it. I just got to come up with a key word. Oh, there it is. Wow. You go, Dana. Ooh, ooh. So, by the way, decurium isotopes are a major byproduct of the radiated nuclear fuel rods. Dr. Raymond Gilmedy from Loveless Respiratory Research Institute in Albuquerque, New Mexico. The decurium isotope, you need lead shielding 20 times thicker than you do for plutonium, because curium really likes to kill you. Toxicity: inhaled plutonium dioxide in beagle dogs. Inhaled. Because you get the big noses, right? 144 beagle dogs. Tumors of legs, the lung, skeleton, liver occurred beginning about 3 years after the inhalation exposure. Bone tumors were found in 93 dogs, were the most common cause of death. Lung tumors in 46 dogs were the second most common cause of death. And liver tumor were found in 20 dogs, but were the cause of death in only 2 dogs because it occurred later than the tumors in the bones and the lungs. Because you're getting 3 different tumors from the plutonium. The lung, the liver, and the bones. And so for young animals, young children, it goes into the bones and mutates the stem cells. It'll burn a hole right through your lung. And then it sequesters in your bones. No matter where it sequesters, where it hangs out in your body attacks it for the rest of your life. Everything, all the cells around it are getting destroyed every second. Your body has to repair each and every one. So if it destroys 1 million cells and chromosomes and pieces of the DNA, your body has to try to repair that every second. And so over 20, 30, 40, 50 years, it'll build a tumor around that single atom. Because an atom is not very big, right? But it's like a biological weapon in the way it works long term, how it assimilates into the body so readily. These findings in the dogs suggest study-related biological effects could be expected in humans accidentally exposed to 238 plutonium. But I got another study there that shows the dogs' kidneys are 50 times less efficient at filtration than a human is. So a human, in other words, is 50 times more vulnerable than the dog is. So, right, and so, because it's Gilmedy, it's Loveless Respiratory Research Institute. So when I looked at that synopsis, and that was their suggestion, I said, oh, wait a second, that's what they're trying to cover up, right? Dirty traitors. And so Gilmedy, I got all of these studies, every one of them. Because I'm that kind of a guy, right? All 93 or 96 of them, I can't remember. He kept me entertained for a couple of days straight there, that guy. He was part of KRQE. KRQE had quoted him about WIP, or Fukushima. The KRQ attacked me in 2014 which is in Albuquerque, New Mexico, TV station. Attacked me in February 14th, 2014, February 15th, 2014, because I had done a segment on the WIP isolation pilot project, because they had had a release and they were covering it up. And I was keen enough to grab everything that was showing up, and what we ended up seeing was a clear cover-up starting to play out. And it lasted, still going on obviously today, right? But it was They claim they had a truck fire, a salt truck. These are very short trucks for mines, and they're just going to bring salt out to clean out an area. So they're like little dump trucks, but they're very low. They work in the underground mine shafts. And people evacuated it because truck fire. But it turned out to be a front tire, a caught fire, according to the pictures they released. And they evacuated 55 football field-sized caverns. So this is extreme, right? For a truck tire. And they evacuated it for 10 days. And when they went to go back after 10 days, on the 24th of February 2014, they couldn't go back because they discovered radiation. Because of cat litter. They won't lie to you, because that's all they do is lie to you. They're incapable of telling you the truth. There is no truth. They don't even know what... They don't even think they're human. Most of these are... like the best way to describe the nuclear industry is the industry with the most serial killers. Xenon known to cause dramatic increases in lung cancer. Well, that's... I'll put that back over here. Hang on. Bear with me. That's the xenon for North America in Washington, Vancouver to Canada. It was around 450,000 times detection levels. Detection was typically 30 counts per minute. Was the Xenon 133, right? That's the Xenon 133 model. Xenon is known to dramatically increase in the lung cancer. I don't know. I know that much. It's very sad. So, Chiba, which is 20 kilometers away from Tokyo, which is south of the reactor meltdowns, at 400,000 times normal, that would have been saturated with all kinds of isotope, technetium-99, americium, plutonium daughters, Neptunian daughters, obviously, massive curium, which curium is the biggest byproduct of radiated fuel rods, would have been massive curium isotopes, and curium isotopes, you need lead shielding 20 times thicker than you do for plutonium. Plutonium killed all the animals in all the studies with multiple tumors. So Southern California nuke plant is a cancer factory. Well, it's a disease factory is the best way to describe it, because cancer leads you down a single road. You got to look out for heart and liver and lung and respiratory and pituitary and thyroid and adrenaline and Alzheimer's and dementia and autism, diabetes. If you've done studies on all of these, yeah, then you'll be terrified what you're going to find. You'll be terrified. If you live within 50 miles of a plant, you'll move immediately. If you've seen studies from that, you'd move like you couldn't imagine. Simply put, it's over. Well, that's what it was with the radioactive fallout. The world's food chain could be compromised. Of course it could be. And children's risk of cancer is 10 to 100 times higher. And Japan's radioactive children will be fined with the thyroid glands emitting 35,000 microsieverts, 35 millisieverts. This is a huge dose. This is not a fuel rod in the thyroid gland per se. This is physical atoms that they're talking about. So this is a ridiculous amount of atoms in their bodies. And they're only acknowledging a thyroid gland. Not all the radiation is just going to go to a thyroid gland. You know, 1/100 of it might go there. And we've seen those estimates, you know, for over a sievert. Radiation health specialists, by the way, with over 11 becquerels a kilogram start to see heart problems. With 50 becquerels a kilogram, irreversible heart problems. But also, they all have the same issues as an adult, where irreversible lesions in the vital organs. It's not just going to be vital organs. It's going to be all the organs, but the vital organs in particular. Right? Because your body has to tack all this for the rest of your life every second with white blood cells, which leaves your immune system compromised because you're not producing red, which means you're not getting oxygen nutrition. And when you look at all the species, how much more vulnerable they are than me or you. Tokyo University expert, cancer on the, or illness from Fukushima will be in 5 or 10 years. 5 or 10 years. Well, it showed up right away, right? You had 358,000 out of a million. You had 865,000 extra cancers being diagnosed. Not everybody got health care. Not everybody understood they were having cancer. Cancer just doesn't come up and knock on your door. Hello, I'm Mr. Cancer. You better get over to the doctor. I'm here. Tokyo newspaper, 6 in 10 Fukushima children tested of diabetes. The head of the Tokyo area medical clinic, not Dana, but the head of the Tokyo area medical clinic says we're expecting diabetes in children because of Fukushima radioactive fallout. And you should be too. The very lowest levels of radiation are harmful to life. We have to rethink the exposure from nuclear power plants worldwide. And all nuclear power plants, not all, but the majority of them are surrounded by farms because they love you so much, obviously, right? They don't want you to get sick and die, so they're going to give you radioactive food. That'll fix you up really good. Actually, it won't, by the way. But hang on, here we go. I got to put that up there. Bear with me. Because I couldn't find it again. Now I don't even know where to put it. Hang on. I gotta go to when I don't know where to put it, I'll put it in the big pile. The whole frig, haven't got to go look at that pile again, do I? Pile? We all got one of those piles, right? You should see mine. Mine's special. IAEA is special. Today admitted there is no such thing as a safe level of radiation. Well, that was awful nice of you. You creepy little bastards. Cortana. Is the IAEA creepy little bastards?
Sorry, I'm not able to help with this one yet.
Damn it. It's okay. I still loves you. Yeah, little bastard. IAEA admitted that their standards are based on bananas and potato chips, not anthropogenic man-made radiation. Cortana. How many bananas can I eat before I die?
Sorry, I'm not able to help with this one yet.
That's okay. Cortana, how many bananas do I need to make a dirty bomb?
Sorry, I'm not able to help with this one yet.
People probably like, Dana's got a button there and he's pushing the button and it says that automatically. Dana, stop being a scumbag. Katana, is Dana a scumbag? Katana, you got no sense of humor? Cortana. Go to sleep. Oh, let's get that poll back. Is Fukushima a massive radioactive nuclear fallout an extinction level event? Well, yes it is. Too much of a sense of humor, I guess. Intel community is right to demand responsibility from Japan for dumping the nuclear contaminated water. Oh my goodness, I don't even know where to start with this one, do I? Wait for it. To dump the water. Guess what they've already done though? Forget about dumping the so-called water. Let's talk about what they already got done. I know that sounds stupid. But this is what they done in the first 20 days. Now, guess what happened when that happened? Don't worry, I'll show it to you, because I'm that kind of a guy. I'm a glutton for punishment. I went out and done massive research expeditions for 4 to 5 months at a time. Just thinking about it makes me want to cry. This was a typical day, right? Just on the way back to the boat, just miserable. The species to your left are exterminated. They've never come back. We went back year after year. The species didn't recover because you killed the very soup of life itself. Now you can see all of these up at my website, nuclearproctologist.org. Print them out, make a little book of them, so you can tell your children what it used to look like before Fukushima. I posted all those pictures from the dolphins yesterday. I still got to put a couple of little videos, some blurps up there. I'll get to it. So they're trying to get you to think about what might happen instead of what already has happened, right? That's how it works. That's how the nuclear industry works, unfortunately. Japan's dumping of Fukushima nuclear wastewater should be opposed. It should be opposed violently that they've already done it. The opposing is 12 years too late. UK stable power supply at risk as nuclear and gas plants close. Of course, this is just another lobbying group with a generated advertisement and everything else for the industry. UK has faced a significant shortage of reliable power generation. Well, they've got the funding because the ratepayers pay the bills or they'll just turn the power off, right? So they got the money sitting there. They refuse to build anything but nuclear. They're hanging on for the small modular reactors. They got memorandums of understanding, so they can't build energy plants. They can only build nuke plants. And only small modular reactors. Of course, the Rolls-Royce small modular reactor is half the size of a large one. There's nothing small about it. And nothing cheap either. What will it take for nuclear power to meet the climate challenge? Besides a miracle? Oh, this story here cracks me up. Nuclear power can be important part, blah, 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 blah. Play a critical role, blah, 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 GDO, CO2, blah, 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 blah. As rapidly as renewables scale up in recent years, it's not clear whether wind and solar are the same song and dance. Don't blow, wind don't blow, sun don't shine all the time. This is why they don't have a energy storage into the combination. Why don't you put some energy storage in? Oh, well, the wind don't blow and the sun don't shine. Yeah, but why not use some energy storage? Well, the wind don't blow and the sun don't shine all the time, sir. Yeah, but why not use energy storage? Well, because the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine all the time. Carbon capture, long duration energy storage. Right, they actually mention it. It's the exception is what I'm trying to highlight, right? Just trying to be a weirdo. Being honest. This means you're a weirdo, right? When it comes to nuclear. There's like taboo as it gets. There's nuclear professors worldwide have come to my site and go like, he's not allowed to do that. He's being honest. Somebody stop that man. He's honest. You, sir, are a threat. That's what they're saying when they see me. My God, if my kids see this, I'm dead. That's what they're saying. Need for new low carbon, zero carbon. Oh, I apologize. I didn't write it. A zero carbon, Dana. But 10% of global electricity, Dana. Can complete with non-dispatchable power sources like wind and solar because, I got no storage. Well, one of the most incredible parts of that story was last year, or the year before, Canada had $4.2 billion for energy storage for Canada, for renewable energy sites, so they can build storage, and that way they can not be dependent on the wind and solar all the time, right? So Bruce Power, nuclear power plant, was like, this is outrageous. You can't give them money for storage. They'll create it, for God's sakes. Nobody will want nuclear. Well, give us the money. So nuclear, which is 24 hours a day, needs storage, apparently. And they didn't take just a little tiny bit, they took it all. And then he said, well, we can't have that happen again. How do we stop that from happening again? The Canadian government might put up another $4 billion. What about they get their hands on it? We need to get rid of them. That's what we need to do. So the Ontario government closed 700 wind farms and renewable solar sites and stuff like that in the last year. 700 solar and wind farms. Because you're competing with nuclear. Nobody's going to want nuclear with all this energy. And so if they had to share it out to $4.2 billion, these renewable industries all of a sudden would have had 24-hour energy, and there'd be no more. And then that would have been the precedence. And everybody would be like, wow, you're using storage for wind and solar? That's crazy. I never thought of it. That's amazing. We don't need gas, oil, coal, and nuclear no more. We solved the golden goose. My God, energy storage. Why didn't I think of it? Well, you don't need it. You can use geothermal instead of energy storage, right? So just use geothermal. You don't need the rest of it. It's everywhere. It's easy. It's cheap. It's free. It's mindless. It's simple. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Let's keep it going. Recently, multiple countries have announced intentions. It's totally posturing, right? They're not actually allocating the money. Britain's got a nuclear renaissance, but they only kicked in $700 million out of the $34 billion that they need. But it's a nuclear renaissance, Dana, I swear. Only nuclear renaissance is weapons. Slow to phase out of their nuclear fleet to begin exploring construction of new plants. Again, this is not a renaissance. This is just speculation. And on top of that, up to 800 gigawatts of new nuclear could be necessary to meet the net zero target. So you mean to tell me 800 large 1 gigawatt, 1,000 megawatt nuclear power plants? You got to build 800 nuclear power plants. 800. 800. They'll fix climate change forever. It'll be normal. Everything will be 1,000 degrees once that thing gets set up. What about you have like a carrying event where you have a solar flare, take out the electric grid, everything melts down at the same time worldwide. 400 to 800 gigawatts of new nuclear, which could represent up to 10 to 20% of the future global electricity demand. So say another 800 nuclear power plants would bring up to 20%. Say go on a high end, 20% of the world's electricity. How the frig is that going to fix climate? All nuclear power plants' fuel pools are hemorrhaging radiation in the environment 24 hours a day. To to meet the needs for dispatchable power that is not wind and solar. Notice how they use wind and solar as just a weapon, right? It's meant to fail, see? Geothermal has, though, like you can see right there, they actually mention the word geothermal. But how rare is that? 1 in 1,000 stories will they actually, talking about nuclear, mention the word geothermal, but they'll mix it in with a whole bunch of other stuff. Right, and they usually throw a big turd in that punch bowl on top of that. Tidal power is perfect. Geothermal is perfect. Long duration energy storage. Like there's 20 something different ways to store energy. From heating salt to heating sand to heating steel with the excess energy and store it that way, right? Or compressed air storage, where you just dig big caverns and you compress air down there at low pressure, like 120 psi. And so you can run a whole city for 2 weeks on these caverns. And excess energy gets directed into those resources so that they can be utilized when the commodities are not online. These technologies are earlier stages of technical commercial maturities. Yeah, compared with nuclear. But wait a second. Like they're throwing everything at the nuclear fusion industry to try to get a breakthrough. But if you took that manpower, put it to work on geothermal or energy storage, you really think we won't conquer that in 6-7 hours? Because that's what it's going to take when you put your head to it. It's such a dishonest industry. It has to throttle everything else to exist. It has to consume all the resources to exist. See? That's why it has to throttle everything else, because it needs all the resources. It's the most resource-intensive industry in history. And it's portrayed as if it has some redeeming qualities when it certainly has none, and that its releases from the fuel pools every day worldwide from 1,000 fuel pools are catastrophic to everything with replicating cells. And this is not a game. I get a little carried away because I give a shit. And I don't know why there's not 1,000 people out there having this conversation. I don't understand it. All the conversations about nuclear are like a banana and like a potato chip and wax and such. It's all just complete controlled opposition. There's no such thing as a debate. They can't do it because you got 80 years straight of lies. You can't have another narrative out there because that resonates for everybody with a couple of brain cells. World's largest nuclear fusion reactor promises clean energy, but the challenges are huge. Don't worry, they'll solve that one. But renewable energy, nah, we haven't got time. We got to come up with something for fusion, Dana. Fusion's the solution, not everything else or anything else. It can only be fusion. It can't be something else. It has to be something that we can't crack. It can't be something simple like geothermal or tidal energy or anything like that, or energy storage. That's just crazy talk. Last energy sign deals for nuclear plants. So this story had me wondering for about 15 seconds. Last energy signs a deal worth $19 billion for nuclear plants. I was like, holy shit, it's going down. Somebody finally cracked the Holy Grail. Here we go. It's all over now for Earth. No, we was wrong. That's $18 billion, $19 billion over 24 years to build small modular reactors that they don't even have a license for. Don't even have it in paper yet. Like if they follow through on their promises, they can count on $18.9 billion over the next 24 years. So that's the farthest thing from a renaissance, right? But then I should have realized, right, they got the Lovings into it, right? From the Good Energy Collective. We knew they were going to strike a big at some point because they're the real scam artists. They've been trying everything and wiggle their way into the nuclear industry. I guess they just got something. Last Energy. These are despicable people, though. Why to worry over the Fukushima nuclear waste discharge? France has done it for decades. Of course, we're talking about the real nuclear meltdown, not the fable one they're talking about. We're talking about what happens after 16 days, the first 16 days of detonations. The whole planet was covered in nuclear waste. And never stopped coming out. It never stopped coming out. And so, right, they want people, organizations, to start up to oppose it. So then they can finally say, okay, we won't dump it into the ocean. And then the world cheers and goes back to sleep again, right? Meanwhile, they haven't stopped dumping it. This is all they've been doing for 12 years. It's hemorrhaging into the ocean. But I bet you that's what they're up to. Because China's in on it and Taiwan's in on it. Right? And they know better. There's no way they don't know what I know. And anybody that's want to be in the know got to come here to figure out what the fuck is going on. That's the pathetic side of this whole story. Is the only spot anybody worldwide can get the story is to come here. Because the nuclear industry is not going to tell them anything I'm telling you. It's never going to happen. Oliver Stone, they should do the same thing they done to Gaddafi with that fucking piece of shit right there. You sack of shit, Stone. You traitorous scum. Israel could strike Iran in 3 months. Well, this is Netanyahu. He's only been a demonic demon for about 15, 20 years or something, right? His youngest kid, when he was 15 years old, could recite the Torah and the Talmud without opening the book. Just stand there and recite the whole friggin' idiot book. Astronomers. Now that's what he does. He uses him to see if it's acceptable in Talmud or Torah, which is their doctrines, right? And if it says in that it's okay to poison the country, then they'll go ahead and do it because if it's in the Torah, the Talmud, then it's okay, because that's the country operates as an ideology, doesn't operate as a conscience, right? As a moral compass. It's based on an ideology. Astronomers will shine a light on the universe's dark ages. Wait for it. Just wait for it. I haven't said nothing yet. With a telescope on the moon. Now, they haven't gone back for 50 years. They're going to show up now and stick a telescope on it. Well, we don't have to go there, Dana. Well, the rocket will do it on its own, Dana. What's the big deal? How come they haven't went back to the moon? I'm completely confused by that. It's 3 days away. Right? You can dig an underground bunker and you don't have to worry about meteorites or anything else. Well, you do if you don't dig an underground bunker, because the moon is one great big crater, right? I don't even want to go there, because we hear all this posturing, they're going to go back to the moon, but how come they don't go back to the moon? How come Russia doesn't have a base on the moon? It's really difficult to wrap my mind around that statement. North Korea got 800,000 youth armies. Well, got no choice, do they? You got South Korea and America every month or something doing bomb runs along the coastline of North Korea, South Korea and Americans. And the minute that North Korea does their own drills, the Americans are like, this is outrageous, they're doing drills. Well, we were doing drills. It's outrageous. United Nations need to put sanctions against them. 70 years of sanctions. They haven't attacked anybody in 70 years. Did America stop at any point in the last 70 years attacking people, I wonder? I can't remember. Refresh my mind, will you? And then you got the stoic idiots. Oh, I can carry a gun and point it. I'm a patriot. My daddy used to fly a jet. I can get a job flying a jet. I'm a patriot. How many suicide bombers does it take to equal one of those jets? I forget. Russia flies nuclear-capable bombers over the Sea of Japan. Well, Russia is right there. Right, Russia's right there. It's on the Sea of Japan. Crisco dry storage facility for used fuel preparing for launch. This is, of course, World Nuclear News story. Never going to have a name on it. These are a lobbying group. There's some pictures. And I'm assuming the little rings we're seeing on the ground are where they're going to drop the cast down into the ground. Because of the gamma shines, the X-rays, the beta rays, and the neutron burst and everything else. You're still going to get pounded. With equipment installed to allow monitoring by the International Atomic Energy Agency. Well, that's about as reassuring as having 10 pedophiles babysit your 3-year-old daughter. 70 years of ANSTO's scientific excellent benefits in Australia, which was the former Australian Atomic Energy Agency Commission. And like, if you know anything about Australia nuclear industry, then you know that they're right up there of the crazies. They're crazies. They're scum. They're real life monsters in reality, right? The Australian nuclear industry. We cover them regularly each week. And over the years, we've seen this clear pattern of just what the fuck raised you, right? In all honesty, what the frig raised these people? A bottle opener or what? Korea to ease emission reduction targets for firms by expanding nuclear energy. Now, the last administration was phasing out nuclear. This one is phasing in nuclear. The next one will phase it out again. It's total posturing. They're going to give a tax break to anybody that uses nuclear energy. The world's 15 biggest ships produce more pollution than all the cars on the planet. So claiming that using nuclear is the animosity equivalent to carbon credits, calling it dishonest is being polite. We got a poll. Did I mention we got a poll tonight? We actually do. Is Fukushima massive, perpetual, non-ending forever radioactive nuclear fallout, 12 years of radioactive nuclear fallout, an extinction level event? Yeah, well, it was a big pulse, right? This was a big pulse to the whole planet. This was a big pulse that covered the whole planet in a short order. This is the plutonium-239. This is one of the worst plutoniums, by the way, and they're all bad, don't get me wrong, right? But this was the one where you'll get 3 different tumors for sure, like the lung, the liver, and the bones. But because you're going to compromise your immune system, you're more susceptible to pathogens and viruses that were normally harmless and innocuous and benign. Traction Uranium in the Philippines Consulate General in Calgary, Canada. This is a really interesting story. The Trade Commission, Department of Energy, the Board of Investments, Nuclear Research Institute, scum, man. The Canadians. No one can be a scumbag in nuclear quite like the Canadians, though. They're really exceptional scumbags, I noticed. The Board of Investments, Nuclear Research Institute. Where are they getting all their money? Well, they're the Nuclear Research Institute data. The government just throws it at them. Evil doesn't have to struggle. Conduct preliminary discussions, uranium exploration, and uranium potential in the Philippines. So they brought in some high-level scum. Well, they brought in lots, actually. There's lots of scumbags that go around in the nuclear, that's for sure. So, including they got a lot of major operations are already under their belt, so they're very capable. But like the industry, the government has to throw money at them, or they'll lose their job, right? The industry got a throat hold on Canada. Canada's been destroyed, but from the inside by the nuclear industry through the universities everywhere else since the early 70s. Total capture of all the regulatory agencies. So they even got the Consul General to Calgary from the Philippines. So what? A corrupt little bastard is still a corrupt little bastard, isn't it? Renewed interest in nuclear energy to reduce the carbon emissions, which is a conscript from the Paris Accord in 2015 out of France. Right, France done that to promote nuclear, but it backfired on them. Now all their reactors are suffering from the Wigner effects, so half their fleet was shut down for over a year now. And they're in desperation mode. They have to import their energy from the UK and from Germany and from France and European countries. And not France, but the surrounding countries on the borders. Their glaciers are melted, and their reactors are mostly built on the river Shrine, which is fed by the glaciers. And so they also got no water to cool their reactors. And up to now, 70% of the fresh water was used on the reactors, which means you can't have it and you can't use it in farms. And most of the reactors are surrounded by farms. Like every facet of this story of nuclear is what the hell do we ever get to this stage? It's like a great big self-destruct button. That's what nuclear is. Russia delivers enriched uranium to France. France has taken used uranium to turn into mixed oxide fuel at La Hague. 50, 60 years now. Greenpeace shouldn't exist. Greenpeace is scandalous on its own. They're the furthest thing from anti-nuclear. They're the controlled opposition. Nobody else is allowed to be quoted or have a narrative. Just Greenpeace. And Greenpeace refuses to acknowledge that they faked reactor 3 and 4 in Japan. And the evidence is everywhere. How could you not know it? Now, Sean Burney, he worked his whole life at Donerae, and the crimes they committed against Scotland is absurd, which was a reprocessing facility. And he's the head honcho for Greenpeace, for the nuclear department. This is how they work. You see this in all these organizations, the same structure. On Monday morning, a Russian cargo ship dropped off a consignment of 25 cylinders containing nuclear fuel, which is interesting. Why didn't they bring it to Mayak? I'll tell you why, because Mayak has got the fuel from Andrea Bay, left over from the Soviet submarine bases that was been sitting in open pools for 4 or 5 decades. These decrepit facilities, right, that have crumbled and caved in. They had to get $10 billion from donor countries to raise the money to go and take the fuel out of there to ship it to Andrea Bay, or to Mayak, which is in the Urals in Russia, in northern Russia, highly isolated and protected. You can't bring a camera there. They got a lake there, they call it the Lake of Death. If you spend an hour on it, you'll die, because they dumped so much fuel into it in the 50s and 60s. All the countries that made weapons done that. What France and United Kingdom done, like France done to the French Polynesians in Niger and the Sahara Desert and stuff like that. And then what the British done to Christmas Island and Montebello in Australia, Maralinga in Australia, and places like that. You know, like Montebello, even today, you shouldn't spend more than 1 hour there. In other words, you're not supposed to be there. Right? This is a group of 280 islands. It's so radioactive, you're only allowed to spend an hour there. But you shouldn't. Not even a minute. Nobody's immune to the adverse effects, the 1800 diseases and illnesses from nuclear. No species. The ionic exchange-based liquid nuclear waste treatment market, this is a big market. This is about treating the equipment at the nuclear power plant because it breaks down, right? That's what they're talking about anyway. UN upholds Fight for a Fairer World as Anti-Racism Day. UN is the most racist, bigoted, prejudiced, biased organization in history, for goodness sakes. Look what they got done in North Korea for 70 years. The first thing the United Nations done after it became United Nations, previous to that it was the League of Nations, right? And then after they bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but I mean, Japan had invaded North Korea for 50 years and destroyed it. And then when they left it, then Americans bombed it. North Korea has never been free, not in the last couple of centuries. And for 70 years now, it's been, the United Nations went in there and used napalm, collective punishment, a liquid, jelly-like gasoline to burn down every community, every village in the country. They flattened everything in the country. They used more ordnance than the entirety of World War II was used at North Korea. United Nations. Millions dead, millions missing, millions in refugee camps, millions unaccounted for, millions of orphans. As a policing action. Destroyed the whole country. Just for the thrill of it, basically. What was it? McCarthy had said about North Korea when they fired him. He said he'd seen a lot of war. He's seen as much blood and guts as anybody else on the planet in his lifetime. And what he's seen in North Korea turned his stomach, curled his stomach. He actually vomited it. It was so disgusting. Because like using napalm in all these communities is collective punishment. You're burning the women and children to coerce the government into doing something that can't be done. Inserting yourself into a conflict that you had no right to insert yourself and made it infinitely worse. And then segregated the country for 70 years and used it to demonize it. Oh, they're going to get you. We don't bomb them constantly. They're going to get you. They'll get you. Of course, North Korea hasn't attacked anybody in 70 years. It was a slave to Japan for 50 years before that. Of course, it's going to try to fight to be free. Like you wouldn't. Go look up the history of the United Nations and then tell me how nice they actually are. Go tell me why they're always surrounded by farms at all these nuclear power plants. I really want to know. The Nuclear Institute Agency urges UK to be the world's leader. Urges the UK to be a world leader in something that they can't possibly be. UK is a world leader in being a douchebag, but that's about it. In nuclear-derived synthetic fuels. Like the first reactor, the experimental breeder reactor, known as Pile 4, right? Or the Inferno 4, whatever you want to call it. That melted down a few years after. That was 1949, and by 50 or 48 they built that, was it? The idea was Enrico Fermi, which is the guy who proved you can have a fission, the so-called father of reactors, Enrico Fermi. His theory was that a breeder reactor can produce more atoms than it uses. And all the breeder reactors like Santa Susana or like Sellafield, aka Windscale, that's what they were about too, trying to prove that theory, right? And the contamination is catastrophic for the whole planet. I got distracted. Hang on. What's the name of that? The Nuclear Industry Association. That's right. It's United Kingdom. They got so many of these. The Great British Nuclear is the newest one they got there. Is urging the UK to take a lead in production of synthetic fuel, which is a breeder reactor. And theory, but except they're going to make hydrogen with the reactors, right? That's the so-called synthetic fuel. Storing hydrogen is really hard for starters. To come up with all that infrastructure is much easier, cheaper, quicker, just to come up with real... Like, they want to do it because of nuclear. This is the only incentive. It's another way of propping nuclear up on a pedestal. South Bruce's offers insight in proposed nuclear waste storage facility. They're going to have a meeting on April the 4th and 5th. I like to be there. So, on April the 4th and 5th, they're going to have all the experts from the nuclear industry, but nobody like me. So I applied for an application anyway. A variety of experts will be part of the event. One of them won't be me, I betcha. We'll have exhibitors from the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission. The demonic little demonic demon at the Canadian Nuclear Safety. They're the farthest thing from a safety commission. There'll be panels in agricultural experience in a nuclear host community. That's the scariest statement imaginable. Bear with me. I'll explain it to you. Because they bought 1,600 acres of prime farmland in Bruce County, right? A couple of years ago. Prime farmland. They want the farmers to work the land too, all around it. Hang on. There's no shortcuts in this, right? We gotta find shortcuts that I don't have to do so much work all the time. I don't mind. So why are almost all nuclear power plants surrounded by farms when radiation has so many adverse side effects? Right? Yeah? You with me or what? Why are these nuclear power plants being attacked by farms? So the only option they got is to poison the farms to get back at you. Because they know it's poison, right? The fuel pools are hemorrhaging radiation. Each day there's 120,000 liters coming out of those thin stacks from the fuel pools, which are still splitting the atoms for millions of years. This is why we're trying to build deep geological repositories for the fuel pools, stuff in the fuel pools. A child's risk of cancer from radiation is 100 times more than an adult. So if you poison the food, then you don't have to worry about people moving there. You can get them where they're to. Send the food to the supermarkets, right? And get them that way. Dirty little humans. How low doses of radiation causes heart diseases and strokes, and liver problems, and respiratory and pituitary, and thyroid, and adrenaline, and Alzheimer's, and dementia, and autism, and diabetes, and Down syndrome. They love you so much. Children with 11 becquerels see heart problems. Do you really think you can avoid 11 becquerels a kilogram eating food from that? You got any idea how small of a number that actually is? You got any idea how many studies they got shown that the farms are sucking up the radiation? They got studies after studies. They know exactly what they're doing. They're not putting all the nuclear power plants in farmlands because they're bored and it's just a coincidence. They're doing it because they hate your guts. Or they wouldn't do it, right? Why are they all surrounded by farms? Dana, you're fear-mongering. They would never grow food in a nuclear wasteland surrounded by thousands and millions of one-ton bags of radiation, Dana. It'll never happen. I suppose maybe you're right. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe everything I just showed you was just a figment of your imagination. Yeah, that's it. We covered a lot of material this week. It was a tough week. A lot of hard stories to cover. I'm definitely feeling it. We got a snowstorm, a blizzard tomorrow and Saturday. Did I mention it was spring? Penn State to host an American Nuclear Society student conference. Penn State. Because one of the little hanger-oners that would never leave, because this is how a lot of professors are created. They go to university, students, and they get their degree, but they don't leave. They stay and get another degree, and they don't leave. They stay and get another degree. Now they can regurgitate the books, like Benjamin Netanyahu's son can regurgitate the Torah or the Talmud. So the nuclear little teachers' pets can regurgitate the whole book, so they become professors. I mean, they're real teacher pets too, right? They were teacher pets in kindergarten, and grade 1, and grade 2, and grade 3, and grade 4, and grade 5, all the way to university, and now they're professors. And they go home, and they got 2 little kids, and a white picket fence. And all they want to do is create all kinds of little monsters and let them loose on the planet. Of course, which applies to everything in the nuclear industry. Nuclear Engineering International, missing uranium found in Libya. Oh my God, I'm shocked. It was right by the nuclear site where it's supposed to be. Well, it looked good for the first couple of weeks and all those headlines. All that fear-mongering. Unusual options volumes for NuScale Power offers a compelling high-risk wager. So, like, NuScale lost most of their investors. If they don't reach 84% or something by 2014, they got to pay back the investors that invested in them. And so don't put your money into a company that after 18 years hasn't produced a single thing and claims that they're small modular reactor experts when they don't even have one and they're at least 30 years away from selling one. And they're mixed oxide fuel reactors too, right? Remember that. They're high assay fuel is what they're going to be using in order to get this trick of a small, so-called small compared to the big ones, reactors producing a considerable amount of energy. They got the trick is they're going to use highly, incredibly prolific emission fuels known as mixed oxide high assay fuels, which is weapon grade fuel basically. I guess we reached the end of that argument tonight, did we? Another night. There's 5 hard shows this week. They were all hard, difficult, complicated shows. It's a lot of work anyway. Worth it. I'm really happy that I pulled it off. I still got a month of recovery to go ahead yet before I get back to normal. Another month I'll be great bashing speed, hopefully. Is the Fukushima massive radioactive nuclear fallout an extinction level event? Well, I've through the whole show I've argued that case out, and it's incontestable. The documentation that I provide is unassailable. It's completely unassailable documentation. There'll be lots of snow coming my way. Yeah, so we'll close the poll. When 94% of the people got it right, 6% couldn't, must have slipped when they were doing the poll. Thanks, Dana and Asana. I shouldn't complain about snow. Dana and Asana makes me feel bad now when I complain about snow because he's got 48 feet or something down there. Dana whining about a lousy foot of snow. Come on, Dana. Stop the whining. Good night, everybody. Vas Tinker, Richard McCann, Albert, John Curtis, Good night, everybody. Don't jab the victims. Don. Let me see what we got here tonight. Shout out to Stephen Young is out there somewhere. Another Gmail. Nuclear. 2. Catastrophic bananas. Yeah, you said it, man. Ooh, whoops, Stephen Young was here. Hi, Stephen. Yeah, anti-nuclear is the only way to be. Stephen's not doing very good. He's got 3 years in now trying to recover and he's still struggling. Jeff Poor. Good night, everybody. Might as well finish the shout out, I suppose. I made it this far. Don Vincent, John Curtis. Skawila. He's usually working during the shift. Peaceware. Good night, everybody. James Lucid. Richard and Albert, I already showed it out. Vidra. Did I get everybody? No, Colette is out there somewhere. Angel is out there somewhere. Okay, we made it through, didn't we? How did we do on time? I'm not even checking. Slogged our way through the 5th show. Oh, not too bad. 2 hours, 12 minutes or something. It's because I was screwing around for a while, right? Trying to switch up the gears. Did I get everybody? I think so. Okay, good night, everybody. Hugs for everybody. Have a great night. Great day tomorrow. Have a great weekend. If you made it this far in the video, you can give me a thumbs up. If you don't, I'm going to find you and tear open your garbage bags on you when the crows are out. I know what you're saying, Dana. There's no crows left anymore. The joke's on you, Dana. Yeah, it always is. Have a great night. Great day tomorrow. Have a great weekend. I'll see you on Sunday. Let's hope there's no more dolphin die-offs. If there's a snowstorm, probably a dolphin die-off coming our way tomorrow. Have a great night, folks. We'll see everybody on Sunday. Yeah, good night, John. Good night, everybody. See everybody on Sunday. Take care, folks.